You know, just before we start, I want to do a quick check on something. What's the fan favorite episode of this season? Ah, fuck me, here we go! A Royal Problem was the episode that convinced me that a simple top and bottom 5 for each season wasn't good enough anymore, and that I'm gonna have to rip off Yahtzee even further by adding a 5 blandest episodes of the season. I made the joke in 70x7 that the worst thing DHX could do with Starlight was to staple her to characters that were just as criminally underdeveloped as she was, a joke I actually wrote before A Royal Problem was announced and modified after it was announced to throw shade at the episode's existence. But Starlight isn't the problem with A Royal Problem, surprisingly. A Royal Problem is loaded with fanfic fuel and nothing else. We were told we were getting an episode exploring Celestia and Luna's relationship. Instead, what we got was an episode exploring Celestia and Luna's roles as princesses and their powers. We were told we were going to get some insight into Celestia as a character. What we got was speculation as to why she fights like an absolute coward. Nothing about either of them was revealed outside of potential anxieties. And I get the feeling that this was intentional. You see, if I was setting about developing the princesses and their relationship, having both of them in the same episode alongside Starlight would be the quickest way I could fail the "you had one fucking job" test. There's a reason in Lunar Eclipse I suggested a Luna episode put Luna in the dream realm alongside Twilight rather than Celestia. There has to be a more developed character playing off them and providing a comfortable framework. They don't even have to do much. They just have to talk for a bit. No world building, no developing more story or intrigue behind alicorns, just a simple conversation. There's a reason I cited The Hobbit the last time we talked about this.
Did you know that your great-great-great-great-uncle, Bullroarer Took, was so large he could ride a real horse? Yes, well, he could. In the Battle of Green Fields, he charged the goblin ranks. He swung his club so hard, it knocked the Goblin King's head clean off, and it sailed 100 yards through the air and went down a rabbit hole. And thus the battle was won. And the game of golf invented at the same time.
I do believe you made that up.
Well, all good stories deserve embellishment. You'll have a tale or two to tell of your own when you come back.
You don't get any better in terms of character development than just two people sitting and having a conversation. That is literally all it fucking takes. You know those scenes where Starlight is talking to Tiny Twy about the latest problem of the episode? Swap Starlight out with Luna or Celestia and you'd have the best foundation for an episode developing the princesses. Unfortunately, there seems to be some unwritten rule that an episode centering around either of the princesses needs to tie back into their roles as demigods. Not helped by the fact that that's exactly what the community wants when they say they want more development for the princesses. Not them as characters, but them as proxy representations of alicorns as a concept, despite that idea kneecapping them as characters. You ever notice how the most memorable moments from Princess Celestia tend to be the moments where she expresses a modicum of dry wit?
I can't just send her off to Celestia knows where without thinking it through!
I was not aware that I was an expression.
That's because that's what real character development looks like. Casual conversation, organically revealing the nuances of someone's personality. This is why I think both princesses work best in a Gandalf-esque role, supporting a different protagonist entirely. In fact, there's one alternative. Instead of Starlight solving the princess's problems, the princesses solve Starlight's problems. That might need to be a two-parter. Celestia especially has always been cast in the role of mentor, and I think that's where she ought to stay. Celestial advice, despite being a massive fuck you in terms of progressing a story, is the example of how to best use Celestia. A mentor giving advice to another character, often snidely and with liberal amounts of sarcasm. In an attempt to try and characterize her and set her up as an all-benevolent goddess with hashtag problems, DHX set about fixing something that wasn't actually broken. We're gonna get into this next time, but Celestia's current status as an ineffectual leader are not actually character problems. They're broad, sweeping storytelling problems independent of her character. On her own, Celestia has always had as much screen time as she needed. People may have wanted more intimate characterization of her, but that was ill-suited to her role in the story. She's intended to be the mentor, the wise elderly pony acting as a compass for the other characters. Demanding more intimate characterization of her is to ignore the fundamental framework of the story. This is the reason that shows have main and supporting characters, and why you don't just abandon the main cast to zero in on random bit characters. There's been this rising attitude among the Brony community to start abandoning what they derisively call the main six clique and focusing more on other characters in the world. And I'm gonna say this as directly as I possibly can. You don't want that. You think you do, but you don't. That's the first big bugbear with a royal problem. It's trying to fix problems with the show, but it's not addressing the source of those problems. Celestia's problem isn't that she's not #relatable enough, or that she doesn't have enough flaws, whatever the fuck that means this week. Her problem is that DHX primarily uses her as a cheap tension-raising gimmick, as well as removing her from the equation so that the conflict can have some degree of weight to it. And then we get to Daybreaker. And I'm almost convinced that the script of this episode was working backwards from the idea, let's have evil Celestia because that kicks ass. And if the entire episode had just been dedicated to establishing an evil Celestia in a dream and kicking her ass 6 ways to Sunday, I wouldn't have thrown more than 3 toys out of the pram. But you know who Daybreaker really reminds me of?
Hey, come, merry doll, dairy doll, my darling, light goes the weather wind and the feathered starling.
In the Fellowship of the Ring, as the hobbits are fleeing the Shire with the ring and they're terrified for their lives, they meet this weirdo in the woods and the plot just flat out grinds to a halt for an entire chapter. Tom Bombadil is simultaneously a big fan favorite and also the single most useless character in the entire fucking series. He is a tension-destroying element who contributes nothing of value, and if anything actively detracts from it to the point you even wonder why Tolkien wrote him in the first place. And almost every film or radio adaptation of The Lord of the Rings just flat out cut him for the same reason. He's fucking awful and the story is better off without him. And that's the vibe I get from Daybreaker. The only reason she's even in this episode is explicitly so the writers can show you this evil version of Celestia they made, and so the animators can continue to demonstrate why they still have jobs. Although, side note here, if you're still impressed at the fact that DHX hires good animators, I'm pretty sure Pixar has made a movie about you. I'm trying to find a story reason for Daybreaker to exist, but I can't come up with one. Is Daybreaker a proxy explanation for why Celestia is always getting her ass kicked? Out of fear that her own power is too tempting to abuse? That was the plot of Legend of Everfree. Did we need an explanation? I know I rag on Celestia for being as effective as toilet paper, but I'm also fully aware that this is just an easy way to inflate tension. And DHX, I and everyone else already knew why you were doing this. Did you need an in-universe explanation for it? I thought with the crystalling we'd already settled on a better way to remove Celestia and Luna from the picture. Or you wouldn't even need to remove them from the picture if you didn't keep writing conflicts that are easily solved by brute force. I think DHX has seen fan art of evil Celestia with Mane on fire and thought this would be an easy way to generate a lot of positive reception. And the reason I think that is because it worked. A Royal Problem is an overwhelmingly beloved episode that's praised for offering insight into the princesses and their relationship, despite not actually doing either of those things. It repeated what we already know, that the royal sisters have been doing fuck all to improve their relationship over the last 7 years, and that their jobs are very, very hard, and now both of them are afraid of turning into magical Nazis instead of just one of them. Although considering that this is Starlight's dream and not Celestia's, maybe shamelessly ripping crappy fan designs was actually wait a minute! This is Starlight's dream! So this isn't even a reflection on Celestia, it's more of a reflection on Starlight's paranoia of failing! Holy fucking shit! This really does grind the story to a fucking halt. We're not even getting hinted at anything regarding the princesses, we're just dwelling on DHX's new favorite OC. Instead of solving the friendship problem, we're looking at how much the person doing the solving is afraid of failure. I know I said this earlier in the episode, but you had one fucking job! I'm hanging on Daybreaker because the moment she shows up is the moment the story ends. While Luna actually got to experience Celestia's job as the Day Princess, Celestia jumps into one dream and then we immediately switch to Nightmare Moon and Daybreaker fighting while the other three sit back and watch. The only new information is that apparently Celestia hasn't been doing Luna's job while she was in exile. Oh, and Celestia makes pancakes with faces on them. Well done. I'm sure this will be a lovely new meme to go alongside cake and bananas. This is what I was talking about in 70x7. This is an episode filled with material that offers no genuine insight into either Celestia or Luna, and it's convinced me that Celestia and Luna don't need characterization. The fandom craves information about the princesses, but is that really what we need? Do they need to be better characterized when 90% of the time they're not active players in most episodes? Or is it just the demand for information about alicorns? I remember when Flurryheart first appeared and everyone was all, but you have to earn it. Well, obviously not. You were just shown that being born an alicorn is possible. That one throwaway line in the crystalling about how much this is beyond their understanding got so much focus and was picked apart so much for what was ultimately a line designed to make Flurryheart's birth more of a special event. This is the problem when we're more concerned with lore than with characters. Why we're more interested in backstory than actual story. Why figuring out the math behind changelings and love and entropy, which someone actually did, was apparently more important than the themes of racial prejudices in the times they are a changeling. If anything, the biggest weakness of a royal problem is that it spends too much time not doing the thing they advertised they were going to do. And the thing is, this is what most of the fandom wants. Lore and backstory that does little more than create a sandbox for fan works. Some of the most contentious episodes of Friendship is Magic aren't the episodes that teach a terrible lesson to children, or horribly mangle an important subject matter. They're the episodes that joss people's headcanons or ask the viewer to think about characters in a manner beyond single-word personalities. Some of the most beloved episodes are either major status quo changing events, exposition dumps of lore, fanfic fuel, or just episodes that reference the fandom. It's emblematic of a massive difference in priorities that leads to people who like good storytelling and are secure enough in their own self-esteem that they don't need to be pandered to, often feeling like their time has been wasted by episodes like this. This isn't unique to Friendship is Magic. It's a problem among many fandoms. This attitude is the reason why I've always struggled to get into The Legend of Zelda, because I like games with a solid protagonist, and The Legend of Zelda is so focused on its lore and backstory and the mythology of the gods that their actual protagonist has never been a compelling character to follow on an adventure. He's not allowed to be. His fans won't let him because it's more important that they be able to project onto him, and having too much personality might get in the way of that. And I worry that DHX is letting that same attitude affect the way they write, putting tertiary writing aspects and empty characterization at the forefront because the fandom wants a sandbox more than they want a story. A royal problem is a distraction. A shiny, flaming alicorn designed to make you think something interesting has just happened, but it was all just a dream. And look at that! I got through this whole video without remarking on the fact that DHX stapled Starlight onto a potentially interesting premise as part of their increasingly aggressive push to force Starlight into anywhere she doesn't fit like a barbed wire anal plug. I've earned myself some extra caffeine in my coffee today.